Dealing with a 2013 Ford Fusion. It's got a 1.6 turbo. It's got 117,000 miles on it, and got the infamous problem that I've never dealt with before. Well, it went to limp mode now, so it's in. Yep, there it go. There we go. So let me show you the codes that we got. Do a fault scan here. So normally we'll get the P1299, and then it'll get the U1035 code. Go here. There we go. U1035, lost communication with coolant level sensor and the cylinder head protection. Let me shut it down. If I clear the code, it comes back immediately. Like P1299 is just stuck in the system. So right now it's off. Let me shut it down. Do another fault scan. Typically it would come back immediately, but it's going to happen again. Let me log in here. The coolant temperature, there's no issues with that. It's just there's no communication with the level sensor, and this is what's creating all this problems. Where's the coolant temp, engine temp? Engine coolant temp, no fault. Engine coolant temp, 87 degrees. Now I will say there's a code that comes up with the coolant pump, and it eventually detects a fault, but there's nothing wrong with that because that's not a prerequisite to the problem. All right, there we go. So it went into limp home mode again after like 30 seconds. But the coolant fan control, what was it? No, here we go. Coolant pump circuit A. Let's get the noise going. So it went into limp mode again. And one thing I will say, the coolant pump circuit A diagnostic status, even though it's off right now, it will go short. But what's constant is the coolant level sensor control area network message missing. So this is the main thing. So see how this went short to ground again. That's not the prerequisite to this. And I don't want to, deviate my focus off anything else but just this coolant level sensor here. And you can see down at the bottom that it only shows this whatever that meters as. This always stays at 500. So just like always, it'll work fine for a little bit, and then it'll jump to hot, and then it'll go into limp mode. See, the pump status is off, but the circuit fault is still there. It's active, so it's just constantly missing this information. So there was a recall for this vehicle in regards to the overheating issue, and they added this coolant standpipe that was performed. The came with the module and the harness. And to add how it was done, how I know, well, because when you read up on this, the code U1035 was programmed into this vehicle because it wasn't there before. And from what the service information state, you're not going to find any testing protocol because it's added retroactively. So with that said, I'm kind of like on a lone basis here, trying to figure out what's going on, how to test this, because I've been messing with this for hours, and I don't want to give you a lot of irrelevant information, but I will say the main thing you will want to check for is powers and grounds. I'm going to show you how I did that. Currently, right now, before I go further, I have not figured this out yet, but I'm hoping while I'm recording something, either this is just going to be history for me and I can come back to it later, or something may come about. I don't know yet. So when I originally diagnosed this, I naturally, instinctively check for powers and grounds going to this coolant standpipe. When they did the recall, the black wire here went to its own separate ground, And then you have a power source is the brown and white wire, and then you have CAN low and high here in these two wires. That signal, the power and ground, goes from here to this junction box and back out and get distributed to the rack and pinion, and then out to the main harness. So let me go back over it. That harness is the junction for the rack and pinion and the coolant standpipe module. So that's what that do. It just bridges those two, merges those two. Certain information I looked up, it was saying this is a module, but it just comes off as a junction box. There's no, I want to say there's no grounds going to this, so I don't think it's a relay. If it's a solid state relay, then I'm thinking it converts the signal over, because if there's some sort of transistors in here that will take a sine wave and convert it over. And I say it to say, not knowing about this system, I took the liberty of hooking that up on a standalone system and extracting the signal, and it looks more like a sine wave. I'll show you that video. So I have another module laying around, which was from a Dodge, even though I'm aware of completely different manufacturers, but I'd imagine it being that it's a module or node and it interacts with the control area network, that we should have activity. So there's some sort of registration with the system, okay? And I do have powers and grounds on this particular connector, and the CAN low and high are active, because this is our CAN high. If I go to CAN L, you see the lights are on anyway, and then there's our CAN L signal. I just don't understand why the standpipe here doesn't have any sort of registration. I'm gonna hook this one up just like this and see what happens. Here's one of the coolant standpipes that he had in the car, not the new one. This is the network, sitting static outside the vehicle, but I will say it's still maybe a dynamic test. And I got water in there, so if I flip it upside down, I mean, I don't really notice much in the pattern. I've been observing it for probably like a couple minutes, and I got it upside down now. I'm gonna flip it back around, and it pretty much stay the same. So this is the low. That's the low, right? No, that's the high. I don't know why. I must have got them flipped around. This is going to be the high here. So I haven't flipped it around. That was my fault. But it's not stable. It's erratic. Let me flip this upside down. See if we make a change. All right, so we see a pattern here. Yeah, I thought I did it. Thought it was established. Let's flip it back up. Yeah, kind of the same, but it's not as square as this cluster here. So I mean, I'd imagine I would see some sort of nice transition, and I wouldn't be like completely upset about this if that junction box was to convert the signal over to a square wave, if that make any sense. So I mean, I can see a sine wave, but maybe it has to go through the box to get squared off. But I don't know, because I would have to literally hook up that box and isolate that with the standpipe and see if it changes the signal, which could be the case. That's what it honestly, that might be what it do. I'm going to check for powers and grounds. I'm going to look for a short between here and the black wire and the brown wire. So I need 12 volts. I'm pierced in the ground, the head of the connector, and I'm looking for 12 volts, and my test light is illuminating, which shorted out. So that works fine. I'm going to inspect the pins, and they look they look great. I can do a small slip test with this. Just make sure they have even tension, which it do. I have a key for removing pins and stuff, and I found one that matches the pins on the standpipe module. So I'm just going to slide them in here and see how it feels. Feels good on this ground. I'm going to go to the positive, which is a little loose. This is a little loose. The only thing I don't like is this CAN network here. I don't know if this is the high or low. I think this was the high. It has some nice resistance. So one thing that bothers me is I believe it may be a programming problem. That's just kind of in the back of my mind. Is the purple is going to be a high-speed CAN 2 network, and if this was a legitimate module, it should be tied in. We should be able to see like this coolant level module somewhere on here, but it's not there. This is a head-up display module that's offline, image processing module, cruise control module, and there's our power steering module right here. Our power steering module is literally teed in with this unit, and that's what's bothersome. So I do believe that maybe it just have to go to forward and get programmed in the back of my mind, even though we have adequate powers and grounds and a pathway for a good network. And I'm going to show you that we have a pathway to good network. I'm currently hooked up on the HS2 CAN high speed low and high. Got my time base on 2 milliseconds per division in the 5-volt scale. And you can see it's working. Like, there's a good network there. One thing I can do, just for the sake of proof, plug it back in and log into the wires here going to the relay or junction box. I'm just going to call it junction box because it's honestly what I feel is that it is the appropriate name for it, and see how it looks. So I'm going to take those out, plug this back in, and then I'm going to pierce in the back of those. All right, I'm logged in there, back probed. Here's our network being back probed at the junction box. CAN network is not dropped off. Waveforms look perfectly fine. So what I can do also, if I need to prove that the fact that it's hooked up properly, which it is, drop the network. I just use this as a stand. Drop that, take a test light, drop the network on the sub harness going to the standpipe module, and watch it drop everything else off. So let me go back to the codes. I'm going to show you that there's no issues with any other module fault scan. All right, we just got about this just in regards to the key. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take down this side. I'm gonna clear all the codes first. Then I'm gonna take a test light and just take down the network. Let's just go here. I'm gonna take a jump right on the back, just like that. Now watch this fault scan. See how I took everything offline as a result of doing that. Take it back out. I took a lot of those components offline, and now I generated codes as a result. So what I'm saying is the pathway for this system to work is there. Either this junction box is what provides the registration, which I doubt, because I just think honestly it's just a junction box, or the standpipe generates the registration and we got a bad new part, or it's just not programmed in there and configured properly. That's the only thing I think of. Standpipe's defective, like a brand new part defective, but he got 3 of them in there. Here's one right here. The one I was testing right here. And then the new one from Ford right here. This is the new one from Ford. So I can't help but to strongly feel that we're dealing with a configuration problem or something related to programming, and this just needs a system update. Because I'd imagine that it has the capability of losing its calibration. I don't know if I told you early on, but I know for a fact this was updated because of X, Y, and Z, and then because of why it's here, the code, and then I called the dealer, talked to one of the sales managers, and I gave him the VIN number. We emailed, and he did state that that was done in 2022. And mind you, this is an auction vehicle. Vehicles never go to the auction for no reason. There's always something that's out of the ordinary and straight up mind-boggling. I did find a case study on IATN, and from what I understand, this particular person wound up having a programming problem. So what I'm gonna do, because I can't go any further. I don't want to take, well, being that signal at the standpipe was not a CAN network type signal, maybe, just maybe, it gets converted over to a square wave from that relay. Maybe. But what I can do, since I know it generates a signal, hook up some powers and grounds to get that activated, and then monitor the network coming out and see what it looks like. Oh, as a matter of fact, no, I ain't gotta do all that. No, well, do I? Huh. Hold on. So I removed the sub harness. Here it is here. One of these this one goes to the power steering control module, and this goes back out to the main harness, which merges the 2 modules. So I mainly just need to hook up to a power source, and I'm in the back on the brown wire right there at the battery. Being that the standpipe module is already grounded out here in the back, I didn't need to ground anything. So that's active right now. I wanted to see if the data coming in was different from the data coming out, and try to rule out the box here, the junction box, because it's a sine wave more than anything, and it's not getting converted over to a square wave, which it should be a square wave. Even if it's jagged, it needs to be a square wave. Call me crazy. So this is the data going in on the yellow, data going out on the red, and they match. They're identical. If I take one and move it down, they're the same, but it's not a square wave. It's kind of like a sinusoidal wave, but it's not square, and that's what bothers me. It's a 5 volt because I'm on the CAN high. Let me see if I can start this over. It'll be on the same. So yeah, it would be the CAN high. Like it starts and then it dies out. But that's what made me suspect the component's bad. Let me plug up another one and see how it responds. So I have one hooked up that was sitting in the car, and you can see that the wave looks like it looks the same. There's nothing different. Let me take this one off. hook it up to the other one here with the water in it. I was testing earlier. And it looks exactly the same. Input and output, exactly the same. So I think that's why I think like maybe it's the relay, but it would need to be more of a sine wave, I don't know, in a way before I can say like, oh yeah, it probably could be the relay, but it could be. Maybe this is enough to create a rising edge, and then after a certain threshold, it's enough to create a falling edge, and then you have your square wave. But I would imagine it'll definitely be more sinusoidal than anything. It's been about a couple months actually. About a couple months. I need to provide an update for that Ford Fusion because it's fixed. It's been riding around for quite a while now. I'll say about a couple weeks. So it's been riding around for about a couple weeks. So what happened? It went to the dealership, and I do have a lot of insecurities with the dealership. They negotiated trying to replace the computer and then program it from there and seeing if the issue would resolve. And at the end of the day, it did. They replaced the ECU, reflashed it, and it worked. One thing that confuses me is when I diagnosed some of the PCM faults with control circuit issues or input problems, output problems, usually they're tied directly into the PCM. They're not utilized from a control area network, and signals are inputted through a CAN bus system. So that's what threw me off, and when I don't understand why the dealer just couldn't reprogram it. So they claim they reflashed it with no avail, and the owner was like, "Well, I had a computer. Can I just give you the computer that I bought, and we could do it that way?" They declined. So that's why it becomes a little fishy. It's like I see where it may not work, but I guess because they're not making all their monies, that they're not going to. Then they can't sell them a computer and reflash it and get them on both ends, versus just reflashing it. So I could have had my guy come out and program it, but I was kind of on the fence too. This was very new to me, and I didn't want to. I don't know. I do know, but I just didn't know what to do, and I put the hope and faith in the dealer to make the best, more cost-effective call. And I know the dealer's not going to do that. They are not going to make sure you save a dime. They're going to take every bit that they can, and I get it because the guy got to make his hours, make some sales, and make some money. I get it, but logically, I don't see why programming wouldn't have worked. If somebody's a lot smarter than I am and does that a lot more, why not explain it to me? I will be more than happy and willing to understand. But again, based off of how this system operates, it went to essentially a gateway module, and all that input information that the computer required went through a CAN bus system. So I don't see how there's a specific spot in there when there's like billions of transistors inside of a PCM where it's just only going to be occupied here. I don't get it. I ain't that bright. But I do need to provide some sort of resolution into what we're dealing with, because everything that I tested, even though it led to a bad component, I replaced the component. You got powers and grounds, replace it. Didn't work. Well, the only other thing is going to be is programming. I didn't want to sit there and start arbitrarily throwing things at it when if it was programmed in and it found its way out, well, logically it should be programmed back in. Okay. So I don't want anybody I mean, you know, that vehicle's old. I don't think anybody else is going to have to deal with that problem again. There's no resolution on the internet as far as this issue. My issue was very specific with a coolant standpipe and losing communication with the standpipe. The value in the data when it came to the coolant temperature sensor was perfectly fine. There was no drop offs. I did test that stuff. So that was the issue. That was the fix. And not too long ago, I was coming back to my place, and he just honked his horn because he was behind me driving in the Ford Fusion. So hey, now we know. Now we know. And my conditions were very specific to allegedly requiring a computer, which I just don't believe. Next time in the future, I will have my guy come out and program it instead of having this happen, which I know for a fact I'm never going to deal with this issue probably ever again. But just in case somebody stumbled across this on the internet, here you go. There's my fix. Pulling data wouldn't have done anything as of right now, and because I'll take that back. It would have been useful to see what the what the CAN network looked like with that component hooked up. Did it change anything? You know, but I'm gonna be honest. This is one of those dealers that I diagnose stuff for and fix stuff for, and unfortunately, you know, a lot of people aren't going to provide me with feedback and in-depth information. So it's kind of like up to me. I'm kind of a loner on this one, but the only thing I can do is just let you know, hey, look, this is the fix. So I can just about guarantee you the PID data that we were looking for with the coolant level is going to be metering properly. But the only thing I don't know is when it comes to diagnosing this particular problem, well, if that jagged sine wave looking waveform was anything legitimate or illegitimate, don't know. But if I happen to get a Ford Fusion with that same engine to come in here, I will just extract some data and save it, and maybe I'll do a YouTube short on it and have it, so just for future references. But I don't know if that square wave was programmed or not. I don't know, but I do believe the interpretation of how it perceived that information probably was programmed in it and it allowed it to work. I don't know. But hey, look, if anything happened, I'll definitely update. Hit that link, subscribe to the channel, stay informed. Had a richness my work. I'll see you on the next one.